Now, before we start this review, there are a few things that I want to mention because Dead Man's Chest was really the movie that got me into Pirates of the Caribbean. Granted, I did see the first one as a child, but Dead Man's Chest was the movie that I saw in the theater as a kid. I have no idea what it is, but maybe it was the theater I saw it in, or maybe it was the time that I saw this movie. But ever since then, I've kind of loved Dead Man's Chest. And I know that if you look online, you're gonna get like all these critic scores, but those really mean nothing to me. It really comes down to, do I like the movie or do I not like the movie? I watched it as a kid, I loved the movie. And I rewatched it last night in prep of this review. I still love this movie. But Jacob, why? Well, hang on, we're gonna get to that, but first we gotta do the intro, okay? Stay with me. Hi, I'm Jacob Suggs and welcome back to another video. And today's the second day in my Pirates of the Caribbean series retrospective, and we're gonna talk about Dead Man's Chest. Now, growing up, my family and I were really big Pirates fans, so yes, I did grow up with Pirates of the Caribbean. And my mom used to throw these really awesome pirate parties, so for the second and third Pirates of the Caribbean, my friends Steven and Joey would come over to my house, and my mom would have basically organized this really fun day for us. It was really awesome. Like, when I say awesome, I mean that if the internet was as big as it is today, we would have been trending on Twitter. That's how awesome these parties were. Like, we would go to our friend's house to swim, and then we would get a clue from their house, and then go back to my house. And I remember one time I found a trampoline in my backyard, and it was insanely awesome. And if you don't believe me, here's a photo. Proof. You can't beat it. Long story short though, my family was really into these movies, and they just mean a lot to me. And starting at Dead Man's Chest is when I really started to become a fan of this franchise. And I'm gonna say something that a lot of people might disagree with me on, but I don't really care. I honestly think this is one of the most underrated movie sequels of all time, and I think that Dead Man's Chest is the perfect example of how to do a really great sequel. Stay with me. I know this movie gets some hate, but hang on, let me explain myself. And much like the great sequels of the past, I think that Dead Man's Chest just ups the stakes in every situation, and that's not a bad thing at all. The movie just has a grander scale than the first one and really expands this universe in a way that you wouldn't expect. The thing is, this movie adds so much more plot into this universe, and I get that's what turns a lot of people off from this movie, but for me, I think it actually works out perfectly. Johnny Depp is Captain Jack Sparrow. I'm just gonna go ahead and say this, and I'm gonna say it at the start of every single one of these reviews, is great, and he still is great. Captain Jack Sparrow in this movie is still unpredictable, he's still funny as crap, and he still has that swashbuckling fun adventure kind of thing going for him. The thing is though, is that they add something to Jack Sparrow, and that's that he actually feels threatened by this massive threat. Like, he's got the black spot on his hand and it looks really gnarly and you're just like, ah. And then it's revealed that Jack Sparrow is in debt to the one and only Davy Jones. Hands down, one of the most underrated, best cinematic villains ever. I'm not gonna lie, as a kid I loved Davy Jones. As an adult, I still think he's a great villain. Why? Because just like Barbossa, he's sympathetic. We feel emotion for Davy Jones because we realize that how he looks now is a consequence of his actions. Plus, like, he has that whole like scene to where he plays like the organ with his tentacles, and I've always thought that scene was pretty cool. And after watching it again last night, I can't believe I'm about to say this. The VFX and CGI work that ILM did for Davy Jones is insane and still holds up. Davy Jones still looks great, and considering those effects were rendered in like 2004, 2005, I think that speaks volumes for the amount of effort and time put into, making him a real character. Then again, that also goes for the entire crew of the Flying Dutchman because they look great too! And that's something else that I really like about this movie. I really like the added designs and the set design and the special effects. That stuff in this movie worked on so many levels for me. Because I think this is the perfect way to blend CGI and practical effects together to make something really special. Granted, I do think that Davy Jones and the crew of the Flying Dutchman hold up a bit because they're in a dark environment for the most part, so maybe that's why, so we can't really see the imperfections, I guess. But going back to the practicality, I really appreciate practical filmmaking because it shows that you can make stuff happen on a budget without adding digital effects. And that's the stuff that inspires me. Like, namely in this movie, I think the fight on like the spinning wheel, since that's practical, that speaks more to me than if it was just them fighting on some, you know, set. But if you watch the behind the scenes of this movie, it's actually really cool seeing how like they, you know, choreographed this entire fight on this spinning wheel. Not to mention that the score in this movie, I think, is even better than the first one. I was listening to that the other day too, and it's still great. Hans Zimmer never really lets me down. Especially Davy Jones's theme, like on the organ that I was talking about earlier. That's probably one of the most memorable themes in the entire film, or in the entire franchise for that matter. And once again, Gore Verbinski, who directed The Curse of the Black Pearl, is back to direct Dead Man's Chest, and he adds so much more to this movie. Gore Verbinski kind of has like what I call Guillermo del Toro syndrome, to where he's really good with creature design and designing stuff. And like I said with Davy Jones, that really shows off. But once again, Gore Verbinski also knows how to direct action. And that's something that people are forgetting how to do these days. It's all shaky cam and up close and personal action. This movie is not like that at all. You see everything that happens, and you see that in basically the entire franchise, not just this film, and that's, I guess, one of the reasons why I love it so much. Especially with the Kraken. The Kraken's in this movie, and it has two incredible moments that I probably will never forget. I don't know, I've always loved those scenes in this movie, and I think they really stand out and add something new to the franchise. So we've talked about Jack Sparrow and Davy Jones, but what about our secondary characters? What of Will and Elizabeth? Well, believe it or not, they actually have stuff to do. Who would have guessed? And part of the reason why this is because Will Turner has the whole father complex thing going on with Bootstrap Bill. Will Turner does find his dad in this movie, and there's like some conflict that goes on here and there and adds more development to both of their characters. And I think that was done really well for what it was going for. As for Elizabeth Swann, though, other than being the female sword-fighting lady, I don't think there's much for her to do here. That being said, she didn't bother me in this movie because she does have an importance towards the end and something that she does, but I don't namely want to say what that is in case you haven't seen the movie. I think that this movie's great, but I think there's one thing that kind of holds the movie back a little bit for me, and that's the character of Tia Dalma. I don't know what it is. I get why she's in this movie, but I've never liked this character. I just thought that she felt really out of place, even for pirates, and I don't know. I just don't like the character. But other than that, hands down, honestly, one of the best sequels I've ever seen. I mean, I check Rotten Tomatoes and I see the scores for these films, and for this one in particular, this is almost like another scenario with The Lost World Jurassic Park. What I mean by that is I love The Lost World and genuinely believe that it's a great sequel to Jurassic Park, but the problem is not many people do, so I'm in the minority there. And I'd say the same is pretty much for this film as well. I think this movie's great. I think it's a great sequel with great aspects, and I don't really understand the hate. I mean, I can kind of see why people don't like it, but I don't think those reasons are enough to justify the fact that it's a quote-unquote bad movie. That being said, what do you think of Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest? Are you like me and absolutely love it, or are you one of the people that's kind of on the fence about it? Let me know down in the comments below, and as always, I'm FrameByFrame. Remember the name, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.